I have a lot of male patients with pelvic floor pain, and one of the things that we work on is correct breathing. Because when you breathe in, during the inhalation, the pelvic floor expands and lengthens, and if you have a tight pelvic floor that's causing you problems, that is one way it can release tension. But a lot of patients, they say, oh, should I just, I'm holding my breath. That causes the pelvic floor to tighten up typically. But a lot of times what they don't know is there are some times where it's very appropriate to hold your breath. If you're doing a very difficult physical task like squatting, there's something called the Valsalva maneuver where you hold your breath at the bottom, and what that does is it contracts the diaphragm. The diaphragm is very, very strong because it's responsible for pumping your lungs and allowing you to breathe. When the diaphragm is contracted, it gives you immense support when you're doing difficult movements. So there's times where you should do that, like if you're doing a squat, and there's times where you shouldn't do that. So a lot of people are walking around in the office and they're anxious and they're stressed out at work and they're holding their breath because that's a normal response, and that is a contributing factor to why their pelvic floor is tightening up. In addition, if you're doing basic like abdominal or hip exercises, a lot of times what people do is they instinctively hold their breath because they need the extra support, and they shouldn't do that because it's not a reasonable expectation to walk around holding your breath all the time, so you can't rely on that stability when you're doing day-to-day tasks. So like I said, there's a time where you should hold your breath and there's times where you should not. Just to show you an example, if you're doing a squat, like I said, at the bottom of the squat where there's a lot of pressure, it is pretty normal to hold your breath. So when you go down into the squat, this is where you would normally hold your breath, and when you come up, that's when you release it. So if you find at the bottom of the squat you don't feel like you have as much stability as you want in your abs and your hips and your obliques, with a professional at the bottom of the squat, you might want to breathe instead of holding your breath.